Gold Review Podcast. I am Jess of HGTR.Nation on Instagram, of course, joined by Sam of WSH Football 365. You can find us both on there. And the Richmond, Virginia portion of Washington training camp is now finished. We had a several day stretch of open practices to the fan base, but the team is now back in Ashburn as we seemingly quickly progress towards our week 1 kickoff versus the Chargers. I mean, preseason is essentially just, at the time of this recording, 10 days away, with our first game being against the New England Patriots on August 12th at the time of this recording. So let's just recap some of the highlights of training camp thus far and a lot of the developments that we've been getting, unfortunately, with COVID restrictions and the COVID-19 list amongst the team.
Football is back, baby. Yesterday, as of today, Monday, August 2nd, there is no Sundays without football until February, so that's exciting. Let's jump into this analysis that we have from the Richmond run, Jess. I'll let you start it off.
So I think the obvious winner of at least the first portion of training camp that we've gotten is Landon Collins. I don't know how many people, that are listening to this keep up with some of the beat reporters on Twitter that are constantly tweeting out highlights or big impact plays that happen, but Landon Collins has had his name pop up a lot in positive manner. I mean, Sam, at least just you and I have had some discussions about whether or not we think Collins will be a starter for the team, and it looks like he's not only at least trying to cement his starting spot back, but he has been one of the clear highlights, just making pass breakups, interceptions, being a vocal leader for the defense, just getting a lot of run at various positions on the defense. And I think that's a very positive sign, at least heading into the rest of this year.
Anyone that has an Achilles injury is, you're going to have questions about his return. Is he going to be as explosive as he was before? And even before that injury, he seemed to be on a downhill trend. But Landon was an all-pro at one time, and all-pros don't just grow on trees, and they don't happen by accident. I think after being in the system, when he first came in Jay Gruden's system, Tom Sula, Greg Minuski, his name was escaping me for a second, which I don't know how I could ever forget that. But being in another year in Rivera's system and being the pro that he is, it's not totally shocking to me to hear that he's doing better. But like I said before, I did have questions. So it's really nice to see him, come back and not get upset that Cameron Curl, quote unquote, took his job. And he's coming back and just fitting into the team and becoming a part of the team and not being an individual, which is awesome and something this team seems to be fostering. So big kudos to Landon Collins, and I hope he can continue to carve out his role. Because like you said, we've had conversations about who will start here and who will start there. I don't think that matters. It's going to be awesome to see both of them on the field, that be Cameron Curl and Collins at the same time. So hats off to Collins for, taking this camp by storm after his Achilles tear.
Well, I didn't even think of the Achilles tear when I was just first talking there. I mean, he tore his Achilles in October against that first game against the Cowboys. Yeah. Camp started, mid-July or mid to late July. What's that, like 8-9 months? He's already back from his Achilles.
That's a really, really fast turnaround. So, you see a lot of guys in basketball, and I've done a little bit of research on Achilles tears, and the older you get, obviously, it's harder to come back from those. And Achilles is one of those things that's why they call it your Achilles heel. It can really ruin the chances of your professional career. So for him to come back this fast from that major of an injury is insane. Obviously, we still have yet to see him in games, have yet to see him fly around at full speed, get hit, so on and so forth. But this is definitely promising. You can never have too much talent on the field, and he's a vocal leader. He leads by example. If Landon Collins is on the roster, you want him on the field and you want him around the players. So let's just hope for the best, and this continues to trend upward for him.
Speaking of players who seemingly started this year with their back against the wall, Antonio Gandy-Gordon, just like Landon Collins, we've already had discussions about. With Collins, it doesn't matter whether or not we saw him getting a sizable amount of playing time. But with AGG, it just seems like weeks ago we were talking about whether or not he's going to make the roster. And while that still, remains to be seen considering the depth and talent at wide receiver at the moment, AGG's been doing everything he needs to make the roster at this point. He's been having a ton of highlight catches, very physical, very showing off the things that got us excited about him in 2020. Now, I feel like the same stuff was kind of happening last summer, and we didn't see those results in the field, so I don't want to buy too much early into this hype that he's getting. But for what you want to see out of the kind of, athletic profile that he currently possesses and what we feel like he can bring to the team, he's doing that in practice right now.
Yeah, I hate to say that I wrote someone off, but I wasn't very high on Gandy Golden coming into this camp. So he's been a pleasant surprise as well. Like I said before with Landon Collins, you haven't seen him full speed yet. You haven't seen him get, taking hits yet, but he definitely looks more comfortable in his pads. And he definitely looks like he's just more comfortable being an NFL wide receiver than he was this time last year. Growth and development is big from year 1 to year 2, and in a lot of positions, especially in receiver. So it just goes to show, like, this position group is so packed and loaded. I don't know what the heck's going to happen. It could even lead to, like, maybe we get some trade value back for one of these guys if they perform really well in camp and preseason. You never know, because I've been hearing good things about him, Dax Milne. I mean, we'll get more into that, but like I said with Landon Collins, you can never have enough talent on the field, so it's great to see him doing well as well. Just going to have to find a place for all these pieces to fit.
Well, you mentioned Dax Milne. I mean, we talked about Kevin Harmon. AGG's having a good camp. But DeAndre Carter, I mean, a guy that we thought was really only going to be signed for his special teams ability, and while it still might be his primary role if he makes the roster in 2021, he's had a few highlight catches, and he's had a few damn near, circus catches that just got broken up, or, maybe the ground interfered or in some kind of process of the catch. But Carter's been having a good camp, too. I mean, we kind of just wrote him off as a possible long shot to be the new kick returner / punt returner. But is it far-fetched to say he could make the roster as like a wide receiver 7? I mean, maybe, but that's just another guy in there. It feels like we always keep harping back to the depth at wide receiver, but this is not a situation the team found themselves in 2020. I mean, we were rolling out Dontrell Inman and Steven Sims Jr. last year, whereas at this point, we're having discussions about wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8, about who's going to push for those final few spots on the roster. I mean, Carter's been doing some good stuff too.
If Carter continues to trend the way that he's trending, I don't see a reason why he does not make the roster, just due to his special teams ability. Rivera said in his press conference today, he mentioned DeAndre Carter specifically. He said he's a multi-use returner, meaning that he can return in the punt game and he can return in the kickoff game. That's good. And that's honestly a pretty rare thing in today's NFL. Also mentioned a couple of really nice athletic grabs that he made as a wide receiver. Now, if he made the team, unless he just comes out and turns out to be this unprecedented or unthought of stud that we didn't see coming, I don't see him being on the field a lot to catch a lot of passes this year, but his special teams ability alone makes him so valuable. And honestly, like, they really, and this isn't a discredit to him, they don't really have a whole lot behind him at kick or punt returner. Obviously, you have the experience there with Steven Sims, but you have the fumbling issues. So, and limited experience from Isaiah Wright last year as well. I don't want to disinclude him. But yes, if DeAndre Carter keeps trending the way that, it seems that he's trending in the return game on both sides and makes the catches or passes that are thrown to him, it's going to be really hard for them not to keep him, just based upon the returning ability, simply.
Well, I just thought about this a few seconds ago, but you could really just look at it like he's taken Danny Johnson's spot, because Danny Johnson was the primary kick returner last year, played some punt return, but I mean, he was a cornerback, but he didn't really get much work on the outside or on the field at all. So you can kind of just, even though, I mean, maybe we could then see 8 wide receivers in that case. I know I've talked that scenario down before, but if you look at it through this lens, that maybe you have 7 guys you like, and technically Carter's a wide receiver, which makes it 8 on the roster. But if you just replace him for Danny Johnson, who seems to now have a hot seat on the kick return aspect, then I think it might be kind of plausible in that case.
Yeah, it'll really be interesting to see how that connects and plays out, because you're right. Like, this does involve Danny Johnson, and I failed to mention him earlier with the return experience. I think it'll come down to what they need at corner versus what they need at wide receiver, and who's going to be better on special teams. If Carter just continues to impress, I think they'll find a way to make him fit. I mean, if they don't have depth at corner, though, and they need somebody with the experience of Danny Johnson, who's fought for a roster spot for, I think, the last 3 or 4 years. He's also a good character guy that's come up from the depths and could fill a good depth chart position at corner. So, not to get too deep into that situation, but it'll just be interesting to see how this plays out. And it's good to have options. That kind of brings us into our next guys that are having quite good camps so far based upon reports. I want to give Jess a little pat on the back here for his Lamar Miller prediction that he would be a surprise camp stud. So far, he's showed out. They've given a lot of reps to running backs, but it seems like He's right behind Barber in the pecking order of carries. Not to say that Barber's doing better, but that's show you how many carries that Miller's getting and where they look at him on the quote-unquote proverbial depth chart right now. Older guy, we discussed him before, but it's neat to see your predictions panning out. Jess, how do you feel about Lamar Miller, your boy?
I'm glad to see that he's kind of doing my prediction justice, making me look a little bit better here. No complaints in that aspect. But I still think we have to see, obviously preseason games, they're more meaningful to fans than they are staff. They're essentially just scrimmages for the staff to see how these guys pan out. I think practices day in and day out are where these guys make their case for making it onto the roster. But with Miller, I'll be interested to see where they kind of put him in the pecking order when preseason games do roll around. Antonio Gibson, the toe injury, he's been saying it's been healed up, but I think the team's going to give him a bit lighter of a workload in the preseason. McKissick will probably see a fair amount, but he's not, a lead rusher kind of guy. So you're going to be getting the Peyton Barber, Jarrett Patterson, Lamar Miller, Jonathan Williams. Those are going to be the guys who are getting a fair amount of work in these 4 preseason games, or might be 3 actually. Forget how the schedule got reworked there, but yeah, I'll be interested to see. We've been hearing good things about him. Is he going to be one of their top guys to give some work to when these games roll around? We'll talk about that when that happens, but yeah, glad to see he's doing good there.
Also, my guy that I predicted, not to pat myself on the back, but you got to give credit where it's due. Adam Humphries' name has been called many, many times so far in the last week. It's clear that Ryan Fitzpatrick has, that rapport with him that they brought from Tampa Bay. The first couple of days, it seemed like Fitzpatrick to Humphries was almost every other play. So I definitely think still that he's going to make quite the mark on the offense and be a very, very useful safety valve and playmaker for Fitz in the offense.
Well, Sam, you not only predicted that he'd be a good training camp guy, but you also said, your 50 catch prediction for him is looking like it's probably going to happen. He's clearly Fitzpatrick's favorite target thus far. Not saying that he's going to get more targets than Terry or Curtis per se, but Ryan definitely likes him, and I think this hasn't more so necessarily been in discussions with people, but you're on an Instagram page, you get a lot of comments, and I don't think as many people realize how much. I said Adam Humphries was a lock a few weeks ago to make the roster. I think that's only further cemented. I don't think it's much of a debate as some people would like. I think Humphries is making the roster and is probably going to be your starter at that position.
I think Humphries is looked at, even though it wasn't the same amount of money, I think he was looked at almost similarly to Curtis Samuel in terms of the team's plans for him moving forward. I see him as the solidified number 3 receiver right now. They jogged him out as the number 3 slot guy to begin with. He's already got this rapport in a quote-unquote new offense, but with a quarterback that he knows. I can only see it getting better from here, barring injury or unforeseen circumstance.
Flipping things over to the defensive side of the ball, I at least have 2 guys I really want to talk about who have just done some great things at camp this past week. Cole Holcomb, he had a good year to close last year. He was a bit injured to start the year, so he didn't get as much talk about as you would think. But Ron gave him some good praise today, and Holcomb has been looking really good in camp. He had a really good pass breakup, or actually wasn't pass break, it was an interception. I don't know if I want to call it one-handed, but he's just been, he was great in coverage to end the season, and he's looking good again this year. If him and Jamin Davis are clicking this year, then linebacker is not really a hole in the defense anymore. He seems poised to have a big year.
Yeah, he, like you said, it was relatively quiet for him, but at the back end of 2020, he did very well, and he carried that over into 2021, as well as carrying over that awesome mullet. With a mullet like that, you better play well, and he seems to be living up to the hype. And if him and Bostic and Davis, I'd like to see them have a little bit more depth of position, but him, Bostic, Davis, Khaleke Hudson, and the Buffalo nickel, it could be a pretty darn solid unit. Especially if they continue to all trend upwards.
Now, we already know that he's a stud, but Montez Sweat, he was doing it last year, and it looks like he's going to be doing it even more this year and better, just creating absolute havoc in the backfield. Now, obviously, there's the context of the situation, and he's going against rookie Sam Cosmi, kind of bringing him up to NFL speed, taking advantage of a guy who is, a rookie, essentially. And so, but Sweat has just been, I don't know, Sam, if you've been reading the tweets, but he's just been absolutely living in the backfield. He's been blowing past Cosme on runs, pass rushes. He's, chasing guys 15 yards downfield, doing everything we saw last year. I mean, I don't know how much we need to talk about Montez Sweat. We all know he's a baller, but he's looking great.
Montez is someone that you're glad to have on the team. The guy's an absolute physical freak. I don't know if you remember his combine numbers, but the dude ran like a 4.5 or a 4.6 or something like that. I heard a report from camp today that he chased down J.D. McKissick 15 yards down the field and pushed him out of bounds. Like, that's like after stopping on a dime, going after the quarterback on an option play and realizing the running back has it and changing direction. That guy is only going to continue to get better. His length, his speed, the way that he works, he might end up having more numbers overall than Chase Young. And it's nothing against Chase Young, everybody. Chase Young just opens up opportunities, and Montez is so athletic. It's rare to have two truly elite grade pass rushers on each end, and Montez is a playmaker, man. I'm excited to watch him.
Just to toss us in there, Sweat ran a 4.41, if I'm correct.
Ooh, my bad. Jeez, man.
You're cutting him short still. 4.41.
That's like Terry ran like a 4.3 something. Like he's almost as fast as Terry McLaurin. Think about that. Like that's disgusting. Going into a little bit of negative, but we have to touch on this. It's a glowing issue in the NFL. The COVID and the non-vaccine situation, rather. Excuse me. Washington has put a multitude of players on the COVID list so far, including Corn Lucas, Deron Payne, Brandon Sheriff, to name a few. This is a growing issue with the team. They are, if not the lowest, one of the lowest vaccinated rated teams in the NFL. Rivera did mention at their Richmond run for camp that their vaccination rates did go up in the last few days when they were offering vaccinations at camp. So that's positive, and I would rather not state my opinion on any of this, but I would like to see the team be ready to play football at the most advantageous position possible. And I really don't know how to go into this or predict what's going to happen, but having everyone come together and this many cases already happen doesn't bode well for the future of the season if it is going to continue to be a problem, amongst the team. That being said, I don't know if it'll get better once the team's been around each other for a while or if more people get vaccinated, but it's definitely something that, we here can't ignore, and felt like we should say something about, or at least address a little bit. What are your thoughts on this whole COVID situation, Jess?
You touched on it pretty well. We won't really be diving into, I guess, the controversial aspect of this whole thing that goes a bit beyond football. But for the strictly football aspect, it's an issue now. I mean, the team's vaccine rate has, or at least vaccinated player rate has steadily been rising over the past few weeks. I remember a report a few weeks ago, they were under 50%. I think they're a tiny bit over 70% now. But if you just look at the guys on the COVID list right now, David Sharp, Deron Payne, Matt Ioannidis, Curtis Samuel, Chris Miller, Corn Lucas, and Brandon Sheriff. All but one of those guys is probably making the final roster. And Payne, Ioannidis, Samuel, Sheriff, and maybe Lucas are not only making the roster, but are big-time players on the roster. So I think, it's tough to try and get into this without either one of us really stating our opinions on this subject. But I saw some people talking on Twitter saying it's better to, get the guy. I mean, and we don't even know if these guys are vaccinated or not. That's the thing too, is with the COVID-19 list, it appears to be very broad in what kind of classifies as landing you on that list. Some of these guys might be vaccinated and have, or close contacts, unvaccinated. Who knows? It's not really released. I mean, that's a lot of whole specifics or legalities of the situation that we can't really touch on. But when it's your key players, I don't know. I mean, I'm glad to see, I guess, the vaccine rate has been rising a bit, just, I guess, making it less of a storyline in that case. But it's really hard just to kind of predict because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we don't know if one of these guys are going to be on a COVID list for a month or if everybody's going to be fine, a week from now, or there's going to be new guys on the list. I mean, it's kind of an unpredictability and a storyline kind of hovering around the team that you'd rather not have.
Yeah, it's totally unprecedented, and nobody really knows how to handle this. I think we've seen that over the last year and a half. Everything's just kind of been a take it as you go type thing. I will say this. I think it'll take an extreme circumstance to ever get any NFL team to have a forfeited game due to COVID reasons. I think that I can't see 53 guys. Like, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I certainly hope that I'm not. That being said, it is something that is concerning. And like you said, we'd rather not see surrounding this team as we're trying to build on more than one positive at a time instead of having a positive and then a negative right after it. So, touchy subject, but something we're definitely have to keep an eye on for the future. Honestly, don't really want to talk about it that much more unless you have anything else you want to say about it, Jess. But it's I'd be lying if I was saying I wasn't concerned just a wee little bit.
I mean, I guess pretty much my thoughts are the same as yours in this. I mean, there's already so much uncertainty going into a football season, how guys can perform, how matchups happen, who gets injured, who doesn't, you know, and I just think it's another level of unpredictability that, you know, you'd rather not have hanging over. I mean, there's already so many variables that go into every single game and every single season, and it's just pretty much like another. You're not getting injured, but it's essentially like another kind of injury to worry about, and you know, you'd rather not have to. But yeah, it's a touchy subject. I mean, we don't want to dive too much into that, but yeah, we just have to keep monitoring that. Hopefully, all these guys are staying healthy and we'll be good to go by the time Los Angeles week rolls around. But we don't really know. I mean, that's the state of things.
Yeah, sure don't know. But keeping it on the spectrum of health, just want to touch real quick. Kyle Allen did retweak his surgically repaired ankle today, set out of practice. I don't think he totally set out. He went through like individual reps, test his ankle out, but he did tweak the injury. He's currently sitting at third string. We'll have to keep and monitor how that is moving forward, but something to keep in the back of your mind. Kyle Allen's still injured, and Steven Montez has been seeing a little bit of time taking some snaps, so that'll be interesting to see it play out. Also worth noting, Daron Payne posted on his Twitter that he does not have COVID, so that's another confusing thing like we were talking about the broad spectrum. It could just be a contact tracing issue. Well, that's all we have for you this week, guys, and thank you so much for listening. If you like what you hear, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube and follow us on Instagram. That's at the BNG Review. That's at the letter BNG Review. You can also follow Jess and I's personal accounts, WSH Football 365 and at HTTR.nation, both on Instagram. Also be sure to follow us on all of your favorite podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, Google, Audacity. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.